So the next property is align items, and align items is going to distribute space or distribute our items along the cross axis. So justify content is along the main axis, align items is on the cross axis. Once again, it's not as simple as saying, it's always vertical space or alignment or how we distribute things vertically, because the cross axis could be vertical, but it could also be horizontal. And within each one, it could be left to right, right to left, top to bottom, bottom to top, and so on. So it's called align items, and it has some similar values. Flex start, for example, will align along the beginning of the cross axis. So if we visualize this, our main axis in a row goes from left to right, and the default cross is top to bottom. So the start of the cross axis is up here. So our items are being aligned to the start of that. So they're spaced out evenly on the main axis, justify content, but they're aligned to the top vertically in this case. So I've gone back to smaller boxes, 200 pixels, and why don't we justify them to the center to begin with? There we go. So nothing new. That's the main axis, left to right. But now let's say I want to align them to the bottom of my container. Well, that's the cross axis, which goes from top to bottom. So the end of that cross axis, I could use flex end, just like that. So let's do it. Let's do align items, flex end, refresh. And now our items are still centered on the main axis, left to right, but on the cross axis, top to bottom, they're at the end of it. The default, as we just saw, is flex start. Whoops, I have 2 semicolons there. Go back, and they go back to where they were. So we also have center, super useful. If we want to center something horizontally and vertically, we can set justify content center and align items center. Awesome. Now, you should also know that this is going to work for different elements of different sizes. So I'm just going to be obnoxious and give one of these maybe a height of 300 pixels and just do it in line here. I'm going to undo this in a bit. And a height here of 450 pixels. Okay. Let's see how that looks. There we go. You can see how center works. It's taking the center of our content based upon that height. In this case, it's height. Now we also have one more option I have yet to show you, which is called baseline. And in order for this to make any sense, what I'm going to do is actually add some text. How do I do H, E, L, L, and then and O. Okay, so I've added hello as my text in there. So each div now has a letter. And I'm going to change that font size, absolutely. So let's do font size, maybe 4 M's, see what that looks like. Okay, and then I'm also going to stop making these super large ones. Maybe we'll do 100 pixels, so a smaller one, just like that. Perfect. So right now, these are aligned on the center of the element itself, based upon the height of the element, because our cross-axis is vertical, top to bottom. So the text is not centered, or it's not aligned on the text, if that makes sense. But if I set align items to baseline, it's now going to use the baseline of our text to align those elements. Now I'll show you another example. This looks like they're just aligned to the top, and they are. But if I change one of the elements' font sizes, so I'm just going to do it in line again. Font size, how about 8 M's? Take a look at that. Oof, that's hideous. I should have done it on a different one so it's not overflowing. How about on this element here? There we go. All right, so they're no longer aligned to the top of the container, right? This one is, but all the others move down to accommodate it so that the baseline, think of drawing a line through the bottom of each letter, that is what they're aligned on. So that can be useful if you have different heights for your elements, but they do have text and you want it all to be aligned, you can use baseline. Okay, so I'm going to undo all of that. Lots of changes there. And now what I'd like to show you is just how this works when we're not working in a row, because we're not always working in a row. So I'm going to change that, get rid of align items, get rid of that text on the inside, get rid of font size, almost there. Okay, should be back to normal. So in this case, our content is not wrapping at all. We fit perfectly comfortably in here. And the cross axis by default goes top to bottom. But I can actually change that. So if I set align items, we'll take a look at this, align items flex end, right? Our end is down here. That's the default on the cross axis. But as we just saw, if we set flex wrap to wrap reverse, that changes our cross axis, changes direction. So even if we don't have content that's wrapping, our cross axis still changes. Now, our cross axis goes from bottom to top. So if I had a lot more stuff in here, or if their widths were a lot larger, how about I make them, 800 pixels wide again? Now you can see we go left to right, so green is the first one, this light green, left to right, but we are moving upwards. That's our cross axis, bottom to top. Okay, so I'm going to undo that, but flex wrap is how we change that direction of the cross axis. And I'm going to undo that 800 pixels as well. And the last thing I'll do here is show you what happens when we're working with a column. So let's make a column here. Okay, so now our main axis is top to bottom. Our cross axis is still left to right, but they're aligned over here because I set align items to flex end. So why don't we try something else? Why don't we do center? What's going to happen to my elements? Well, now they're aligned in the center of the cross axis. So main axis, top to bottom, there's not enough space really for anything to happen. But if I set flex wrap to wrap and refresh, now we've got a lot of stuff going on. My main axis, top to bottom, that's unchanged. My cross axis, left to right. And I turned on wrap. So now my elements are wrapping, and I set align items to center. And that has to do with the cross axis, which is now horizontal. And if we switch this to flex end, now they align over here on the right side. If I do flex start, they go to the start of the cross axis. So main, top to bottom, cross is left to right, and I could change that. If I did wrap or reverse, wrap reverse, geez, tripping myself up. Now main, top to bottom, cross, right to left. Oh, it's a lot of terminology, I know, but with practice, with time and patience, hopefully it will all make sense for you. So that is align items. It's how we align our content along the cross axis. Justify content is the main axis. So again, it's not always horizontal and vertical. They could change the flip of a switch, right? Very different. At this point, justify content right now is set to center, and that's how they're centered on the main axis, which is vertical. But if I go to a row, all of a sudden justify content center is now horizontal, left to right, centering them. Okay,